Okay, so before we explore the deeper message of the Parsha, first we're going to understand a little bit of the story itself. I was asked to give, because I jump right into deeper ideas of the Parsha versus giving you a little storyline. Some of us have the opportunity to read the Parsha before class. Some of us don't have the opportunity. So I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to bring us up to date at what is the backdrop for what we're going to be learning today, okay? So let's start to understand the story itself. So we know that it's Parsha Korach, and anytime somebody hears Parsha Korach, it's like, right? Well, what's the story with him? So we'll see that this Parsha revolves around one of the most dramatic and challenging episodes of the Torah. Korach was Moshe's cousin, and he was a respected member of the tribe of Levi. He led a rebellion against the leadership of Moshe and Aaron. And if I were to ask you right now, for those of you who have read the Parsha, was he right or wrong? A lot of people are going to say, what was he doing? Why was he doing it? So together with Datan and Abiram, longtime opponents to Moshe Rabbeinu, plus 250 distinguished leaders of the Jewish people, he challenges the ideas that Aaron and his descendants should serve as the Kohanim. And Korach argues that since the entire nation is holy, no individual or group should be elevated above the rest. And I pose a question to you. Do you think that the Kohanim should be above us or not? In your own limited or not so limited belief. So the reason I'm asking the question is because I think it's very different to understand the Parsha or any part of the Torah when we see it from the outsider versus when you put yourself in the shoes of, right? Like anything in life. And it was interesting because I came to realize that this week there was somebody that, whatever, was going through something, and the reaction was very interesting, was pushing back. I didn't understand. I was trying to talk to this person, and the person was pushing back. I didn't understand. And later, a week later, I finally was able to go visit, and I realized the challenges this person was experiencing versus my outlook of the situation completely changed a week later when I understood. I had a depth of understanding of what the storyline was. So the reason I'm asking you the question is for each of us to put ourselves in the shoes of Korach and see from his eyesight why. Why? Because we're going to, by the end of the class, flip the whole entire story. Moshe argues that since the entire nation is holy, no individual group should be elevated above the rest. And to determine who was truly being chosen by Hashem, Moshe proposes a test involving the offering of the Ketoret. Anybody remembers what the Ketoret is? Ketoret? The incense. Okay, so the sacred incense normally brought only by those authorized to the service of the Mishkan. And the next day, Korach and his followers bring Ketoret, and instead of proving their claim, the earth miraculously opens and swallows Korach, Datan, and Abiram, while heavenly fire consumes 200 men offering the incense. So even after these dramatic events, the people continues to question Moshe and Aaron, leading to the plague that spreads through the camp. And Aaron stops the plague by bringing the Ketoret and standing between the living and the dead. To remove any remaining doubt regarding the priesthood, Hashem commands each tribe to bring a staff. Everybody remembers the story with the staff? Each one has to bring one staff, and there's something miraculous that happens that overnight the staff blossoms, produces flowers, and produces almonds, demonstrating that this selection as the Kohen Gadol was not a human decision, but a divine one. Meaning that the sons of Aaron, the tribe of Aaron, is the staff that flourished and the rest did not. So the obvious question is, why almonds? Anybody knows why almonds?
They grow very quickly.
Great. The short answer is that almonds grow very quickly. And we're going to see from the Torah, from the inside, why. Somebody's doing the reading. In fact, the Hebrew word of almond is shkedim, which is the same numerology of shaked, which means quick. So due to the element of speed, almonds are the most appropriate fruit for priesthood. That's just on the simple level. And I invite you all to look deeper every time. And if you already finished reading the Parsha, the Chumash, now go to the Midrash. And if you already finished with the Midrash, come here, right up there, you have the Me'am Loes. Me'am Loes, you could spend a year reading one Parsha. It's fascinating. So do take the time because you're going to see how it becomes multi-layer as the years passes. So the Parsha concludes with Hashem reaffirming the unique roles of the Kohanim and the Leviim and outlining their gifts and offering, and the Jewish people are commanded to give them, including Truma and other priestly gifts. So at first glance, the parsha appears to be about leadership, authority, and rebellion. But as you will see soon, beneath the surface lies something much deeper, which is the nature of holiness itself. And the debate is what stands at the heart of Korach challenge. What was the storyline here? So the question behind the rebellion. Parsha Korach is usually presented as a story of rebellion, right? But Korach, as we just said, but Korach challenges Moshe and Aaron, questions their leadership, and ultimately suffers a devastating downfall, as we saw. On the surface, the lesson seems very simple. Korach was wrong and Moshe was right, right? Very simple, very child level, right? But if that were the entire story, then why would the Torah devote an entire parsha to this storyline? If it was only about good over evil or negativity per se, then, or right over wrong, why the whole parsha should be called Korach? And we learned last year, if you go back to that class, that each name of the parsha is the strength of the parsha, the same way as your name, your Hebrew name, is the strength. And you're going to see that throughout the year. I'm going to continue saying this point about the name. I'm sure all of you have a Hebrew name. Some of you have a Hebrew name on my phone already recorded as your Hebrew name. Use your Hebrew name. Use your Hebrew name because it's really the power of who you are. So going back into the parsha, the deeper question is not whether Korach was wrong. The Torah makes that clear. The deeper question is why is his argument sounded so convincing, right? Because if it didn't make sense, then nobody else would follow. But the fact that everybody else followed means that he was pretty convincing. So why were respected leaders willing to follow him? And why does the Torah preserve his words for all generations to come? And the answer is that Korach was not fighting against holiness. In many ways, he was fighting for holiness. And I'm going to repeat that. Korach was not fighting against holiness. He was okay with the holiness. He was fighting for holiness. His mistake was not that he saw something false. His mistake was that he misunderstood a profound truth. To understand that truth, we have to go back to the events that immediately preceded his rebellion. Okay? So, how many of you already were here the last two parshiot? Because kind of the story continues. I'm going to go briefly into it. As I see some people did not hear the class. So going back to this story, we'll see that the rebellion of Korah does not begin with Korach. It actually begins with the spies, right? We just read about the spies. One of the most curious aspects of this story was the timing. Why does Korah choose to challenge Moshe immediately after the episode of the spies? So the spies, what did they believe? Who remembers?
He believed that it was an impossible task to go to the land of Israel and succeed.
Exactly. They believed in order to remain highly spiritual, I can't go into Eretz Kodesh, and Eretz Israel. Why? Because I'm going to be intertwined with physicality, and the demand of physicality will take me away from my spiritual pursuits. In the desert, I'm all taken care of. Hashem is giving me everything. That's it. It's all God, God, God. I have nothing to do with physicality. I could remain higher spiritual. Now, for those of us that learned, they will learn, was that true or not? The answer was that it's not true. The real goal was for the Jewish people to enter Eretz Israel, because the whole purpose of creation is to actually interact with physicality to bring it to a spiritual place. That's basically one of the punchlines from last week's class. So we see that they were surrounded by miracles, they were sustained directly by Hashem, everything was given to you by Hashem, and free from distraction of any ordinary life. So they could dedicate themselves entirely to spirituality. And if I were to ask any of us, I think part of us, part of our holy soul, wants that. Our holy soul wants to remain in this place that is connected, that feels God, that is elevated, and is really not interested in the physical end of this world. Now, entering the land meant entering the world of work, responsibility, agriculture, business, and all the challenges of physical existence, which a lot of our Sefer Halacha, our halachot, is about agriculture, what's mine, what's yours, your property, my property, etc. It gets very complex. So they fear that holiness they experienced in the desert will be lost. But Hashem rejected that conclusion because he says, what is the purpose of creation? Was never to remain in the desert. We're not meant to be living in a place where there is no Bechira Chofshi, on a place, not so much Bechira Chofshi, but not that you are choosing, that you are intertwining, that you're making this place, this earth, a godly place. So the desert was the preparation, as we said last week, and it was basically the classroom for the Jewish people. This is how they learned how to live with Hashem. It was our training wheels. And the goal was always to enter the land and bring the holiness into everyday life. Now, Judaism is not a religion of escape. It's a religion, or it's a religion of a mission and transformation. The challenge is not to run away from this world, but is to elevate the world one step at a time. And Korach understood this lesson very well. In fact, we have understood it as well. So now, what is Korach seeing? He saw that the lesson of the spies, and he drew that seemed like a very logical conclusion. What did he think? What did he say? If Hashem's purpose is fulfilled, specifically within the physical world, then perhaps ordinary Jews could accomplish something even greater than Kohanim. Right? He took what we learned last week and took it one step further. He was not confused as, I don't want to get into Eretz Israel. His point was, if I already got into Eretz Israel, and my whole purpose of life is to go into the land of Israel, why do I even need a Kohen? I'm just equal as a Kohen. Why? Because the Kohen serves Hashem in a holy environment. He works inside a Mishkan. He's surrounded by visible holiness. But the ordinary Jew, you and I, serve Hashem in the marketplace, in the home, in the middle of the ordinary lives. He takes a world that does not naturally reveal holiness, and he transforms it into a place where Hashem can dwell. That was a big difference. That's basically the main difference, is the place where you are revealing holiness. The Kohanim were revealing holiness in the temple, on the Mishkan, in their holy work, in that place where nowadays we'll say in your prayer, right? When you're making the halal, you take that piece, you're like the Kohen, right? In that moment that is connected. But what happens with the rest of your life when you're not really connected? Can you really elevate? And his point was, if Hashem wanted you to get to Israel, then of course you could do it. You don't even need this idea. But the ordinary Jew serves Hashem in the marketplace, as I just said. So from Korah's perspective, this was not a secondary achievement. It was the very purpose of creation. If so, he asks, why should the ordinary Jew look up to the Kohen? Question 1. Question 2. Why should prayer and Torah study be viewed as a more elevated than the activities through which Hashem's purpose is actually fulfilled? Question 3. Why should there be a spiritual distinction at all? Why shouldn't be all equal? And if you think about it, it's a very realistic question, because in the end of the day, we were all created equal in the eyes of Hashem, right? And it's something that is funny that we, right now, as a Jewish nation, we're being seen different. But we are all equally created in the eyes of Hashem. Yes, we have the Pinteliyid, that's a different level. So the entire congregation is holy, Korach declared. And in many ways, he was right. Every Jew stood at Sinai, right? We said that there was not one Jew who was not standing at Sinai. Every Jew possesses a divine soul. There's no difference between the soul of a Kohen and the soul of a common man. Every Jew carries holiness within them. And this is what makes Korach's argument so compelling, because it's built on truth. And now from that, we move into the next aspect, which is the greatest spiritual mistakes are rarely built in complete falsehood. And if I were to ask you right now, anything that is distorted, right? A lot of times you're learning something that has nothing to do with Torah, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that's Torah, right? It's so distorted that you don't even realize. And to that, I bring you a story that I heard one time from my rabbi, and the story was like this. The story is that one time a Jewish gentleman had converted outside to a different religion, and the parents were going, oh my God, my kid converted, what am I going to do? Is like he's lost. And they said to the rabbi, can you help us with this kid? And the rabbi says, of course, I could try to help, whatever I can do. I mean, bring him over. So he's speaking to the kid over and over and over and over, hours and hours. And finally, he says, I converted because one reason. And he quotes And I'll just read to you what he quotes. He reads the following. I went to a class that was in the church, and they were singing a song that was saying, Lord our God, they are brought down and fall, but we shall rise and stand upright. Save the Lord, the King will answer us on the day when we call. And the rabbi looks at him, he says, that's the reason why, that whole song, that's the reason why. He said, yes, I felt very connected. And the rabbi just turns around, pulls Sefer Tehillim, and he says, guess what? This is chapter 20 of Tehillim.
Exactly.
You're looking for the source. You're looking for yourself. You're looking home, and you're looking at it outside. You don't realize that you have it at home. And to that effect, I'm going to tell you a second story. That is a story that brings this idea really to life. And the story goes like this. And I probably said it one time in the past, so for those of you who heard it, here we go. The story goes that there was a gentleman that had a house, had his wife, everything, and his business went south. It went down, that's it. His business is finished. And, he's stressing, he's really trying to find another job, can't do it. And then time passes by, and then he goes, and he says, you know what? I remember, my parents used to have this idea. I have some idea about fashion. I'm going to open a fashion company. And he tries, and he really puts himself in, goes south. All along, his mother is saying, maybe we should sell the house, maybe we should downsize, sell the furniture. Let's just start getting some money on the side. Like, this is getting out of control. He says, no, the fashion didn't work, but trust. I'm going to do bakery. So he opens the bakery. I remember how my parents bake, opens the bakery, nothing. The whole thing goes south. And then he goes one step even further, and the wife says, okay, yeah, that's it. Sakta, finished. Now we're going to sell the house. And as he's going through the house, his wife says to him, before we sell the house and put it on the market, you need to really go upstairs, because in the attic, we have everything left from your grandparents and your parents. Like, everything got moved up there, sitting there for 25 years. Anybody here who's doing cleaning of the house, you know exactly what I'm saying, right? So he goes up there, and she doesn't want. Finally, he starts selling things, the furniture, this and that. And eventually, he finds in the corner this treasure chest that is rusty. He can't even open it. He's like, let's just throw it out. Nobody's going to want the house with this thing that is all rusty. And she says, no, open it. Maybe there's something. And he's really struggling until he finally pops it open. Diamonds, gold, emeralds, jewel, everything. I have to start cleaning. We totally have to start cleaning. And when he opens his chest, the analogy that is brought is that a lot of times, everything that we look for is out there. But we don't realize that everything that we actually need is right here. The fact that you were born Jewish means you have the biggest inheritance in planet Earth. Your parents gave it to you. Your grandparents suffered because of it. Our great-grandparents went in the Holocaust because of it. And it's right there. And a lot of times, going into that chest is hard, because you're breaking something that is close. You haven't seen it since you were born. Everybody here 25 years ago plus, right? It's hard digging it. But what you find, that is really your inheritance. That's really returning to Hashem. Which brings us in the same line that this fellow who was seeking for conversion to look out there, the answer was home. You have it right here. So we see that everything that is falsehood the source is really the real source. Or it's like, if you go, and I'm not here to judge any religion or any part of a religion, but a lot of times you go, let's say, to a Catholic place, or you go to, right, or you speak to somebody, and they're saying something so Jewish. And sometimes you take a book, and you open this book, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's in the Torah, right? So nothing is so far away, because if we go back to the beginning of all our classes, we know that Hashem created the world. First, he created the blueprint. He looked at the blueprint. The blueprint is the Torah. It means that everything within this world the furthest away, still part of the Torah. It still has carried that spark of godliness from Hashem. So the greatest spiritual mistakes are rarely built on a complete falsehood. More often, they're built on truths that have been pushed one step too far. And that's what Korach correctly understood, that holiness belongs in the physical world. He understood that. What he failed to understand was that the physical world can only remain holy when it remains connected to something beyond itself. It means connect. When I'm telling you, go read the Parsha or go say the Tehillim, connect. Because left by our own devices, we will be lost in one day. We'll be lost one day. That is the reason why you have the commandment to pray in the morning and in the afternoon and in the middle of the day. And God forbid, when you hear no good news, just make a bracha. And when you hear good news, you make a bracha. Your whole life is surrounded. Connect, 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 connect. It's like you need your Wi-Fi to be 5 bars. Is it 5 bars nowadays? I don't even know, right? But that's what it means. It means that Hashem, in order for you to survive and for you to fulfill the purpose for what you were created, you need to be in your mode of connection 24/7, even when you sleep, right? Okay, so more often they are built on truths that have been pushed one step too far. And I think this is a call for each of us to see where have you pushed your own truth too far. When you say, no, I'm not in that level. No, that's not exactly how, you're supposed to do it, right? Or we come up with our own, what I call Rashi in the Halachot or the Torah. When we come and we want to make the Torah our way versus making our ways like the Torah. And it's a very important thing. And I said it one time, and I'm going to repeat it because my husband one time said it, a few weeks ago, I said it, that why... he gave the example of the Big Ben. Were you guys here when he said it? He gave the example of the Big Ben. And he was speaking about the Torah being open. And he was speaking about the Torah in the center, the Mishkan in the center. And he was saying, and he was also speaking about the clouds of glory up. And he was saying something very interesting. Why do you have in London the Big Ben? Because you have to check if your time is correct, right? It's not I'm going to change the Big Ben time to fit my 5 minutes late I want to be. It's am I really on target? That's what it is. When the Torah is at center, when the Mishkan was at the center, when we go in the synagogue, the Torah is at the center, it's there or it's high, is for us not to say, how could I change the Torah to fit my life? But how could I change my life to fit the Torah? Is the central point of your life. Okay, so going back to the Parsha, Korach correctly understood that holiness belonged in the physical world. What he failed to understand was that the physical world can only remain holy when it remains connected to something beyond itself. So Korach saw where holiness is meant to arrive, but he forgot where holiness comes from. Where is your energy coming from? He understood the destination, but he lost sight of the source. Once he recognized the importance of ordinary life, he concluded that ordinary life no longer needed transcendence. If holiness is found in the world, perhaps the world is enough. If serving Hashem happens through daily life, perhaps moments devoted entirely to the prayer, study of the Torah, and spiritual growth are not longer so essential. It's like the difference between a person who feels, just to illustrate, the person who feels Torah-oriented and the person who feels action-oriented, right? We all have something that pulls you. And I'm giving you this just as an example. For example, a person who says, I have to learn and learn and learn and learn and learn and learn. And the person who's saying, forget learning, I just have to go do mitzvot. Which one is true? You can have a mitzvah is comprised of 2 parts. You have the soul of the mitzvah and you have the vessel of the mitzvah. And you only get sachar when you have a full mitzvah, right? When you do give tzedakah and you're like, okay, here's $1, you get it because you gave $1, you get sachar for that. But your intention wasn't there, your kavanah wasn't there. If you have all the kavanah, but it doesn't come through, great, you got points for kavanah. When is a full mitzvah? When you're fully in it. Now the question is, how could you be fully in it if there's no nishma, if you're not listening, if you're not understanding why you're doing this mitzvah? So this is where Korach went wrong. A Jewish home becomes holy because it remains connected to Hashem. A business becomes holy because it's guided by the Torah laws. Like I just said, once you have agriculture, all of a sudden you have to go read 2 volumes of halakha, how you're handling your separation of the land. How many crops are you giving? When can you use the land, right? It becomes very intricate and complicated. So the purpose is fulfilled in the world, but the strength to fulfill that purpose comes only from above, from Hashem. So now, Moshe's answer to Korach contains the key to the entire parsha. He says, in the morning, Hashem will make known who belongs to him and who is holy. At first glance, it sounds like Moshe is simply delaying the confrontation. But the Rebbe explains that these words are actually Moshe's response to Korach's entire philosophy. Morning represents light. Morning represents clarity. Morning is the moment when things become visible for what they truly are. That's what morning represents, right? Moshe was teaching us that while holiness must enter the world, it must continuously be illuminated by something beyond the world. Meaning that if we were to bring it to a simple way, think about marriage. A marriage is not built on the anniversaries and the greeting cards and all the gifts, the special occasions. It's actually built when you're hustling with it, right? It's built on the ordinary Tuesdays when life is going crazy. It's on the tough conversations. It's on the splitting of the responsibilities. That's where marriage ritually actually happens. You know, when you go into your Instagram, you see all the stories of people going to Bahamas and, you know, kissing and hugging. And then 2 days later, you realize they're actually in City Hall getting a divorce. So, right? So where is really the connection happening is happening in the interconnection between the two. Yet, if a couple never takes the time to nurture the relationship itself, the relationship eventually will become mechanical, meaningless. And I could tell you it doesn't take 30, 40 years. I have girls, I am dealing right now with somebody 6 months in who's like, I'm done. Right? It means that there was never really intimacy. And I'm not talking physical intimacy, that probably there was. There was not really connection. There was no kesher. There was no two becoming one. So structure remains, but the life inside begins to fade. And the same is true in our relationship with Hashem. The purpose of Judaism is not found only in prayer and Torah study. The purpose is found in life itself. It's found in the way we conduct our business, raise our children, build our homes, and transform ordinary reality into a dwelling place for the divine. And I mean even in the most physical things. I don't know if some of you might know, some of you might not know. When you build a home, you're supposed to leave the wall that faces the door unfinished. Did you guys know that?
That's
You're supposed to leave one piece unfinished. And the reason is because you could build a $5 billion house, but you should never be lost in the idea that this is not really your home. This is a house. You happen to be residing for X amount of years, but this is not really your home. Your real home is when we're going to be in Yerushalayim with the temple, third temple. That is your home. That is your real home. So we leave it incomplete in order to remind us, don't settle, don't get too comfortable. We haven't reached your destination. You still have work to do. Which is interesting because when you have a wedding, what is the last thing the Chatan does under the wedding? He breaks a glass. But we just, like, this is the happiest day of your life. You waited your whole life for this day. You spend all your money in this day, right? You got the best flowers. And yet you break in a glass. Because we have to remember that even though I'm the highest of my simcha, my mission isn't completed. I'm still mourning the fact that we don't have our home, our destination. So life must continually be nourished by moments that reconnect us with the source, with prayer, with Torah study, with spiritual growth, because these are not an escape from it. These are the light that gives life its meaning. And this is true in every area of life. A person can build a successful business, but then he loses the sight of the value that guided him to build this big business in the first place. Success eventually becomes empty. And you're going to see that a lot of times people build an empire, and all of a sudden, goes south in 3 minutes. It happened to us now. We had a great eye doctor who the whole world went, and he had 5 offices. And unfortunately, he passed away, and his sister and the family continue. In one day, they say all 5 practices are closed. I don't know if anybody
I know him.
know him.
Amazing.
Giant. He literally, his sister saved my mother's eyesight, actually. So it was an incredible practice, but it's gone in one day. What happened to all the years of preparations, right? This week was such an eye-opening because I know that if somebody doesn't respond, it's because of a reason. But I never really experienced it the way I experienced it this week. Like this person was, I didn't understand why the person is not coming forward, and the person is actually going through something with health and could not even talk to anyone. Didn't know her day or night. So a lot of times it's like putting yourself there. But going back to what we're saying, a person can build a beautiful family, but if she stops investing in the spiritual foundation of the family, all of a sudden you're going to see that the structure may remain, but while the soul and the relationship begins to weaken, right? A home, you can be a home, go give birth to 5 kids, put them in a house, hire somebody, and you can. Parenting is constant. And your kid could be 75 and you are 95 and you're still hustling and praying for your kid and going to sleep, waking up and calling.
Of course.
Right? So it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It means that for it to survive, spiritual survive, it needs a continuous put of energy from you. But that is exactly what Hashem wants. But if we stop creating those moments of connection altogether, ordinary life slowly loses its direction. You know, when we start feeling down and all of a sudden, or we have a challenge and all of a sudden you hear something of Torah. Like now it's funny because I guess I speak about Torah so much that Instagram always gives me, or YouTube gives me like a liner that I needed to hear. And I was speaking to one of my best friends and I'm like, oh my gosh, this just popped on my feed. And I'm like, okay, algorithm, okay, that's it. But it was exactly what I needed to hear in that very second. So we need to understand that Hashem wants that connection constantly. So Korach understood where holiness belonged, but Moshe understood how holiness survives. So one of the most important things to understand about Korach is that he generally wanted closeness to Hashem. The fact that he accepted Moshe's challenge of offering incense revealed something profound about his character. This was not a harmless experiment. Everyone knew the dangers involved. Everyone knew what happened to Nadav and Abihu, right? If you go too close to holiness without being asked. Yet Korach and his followers accepted the challenge anyways. Why? Because they longed for transcendence. They wanted a deeper relationship with Hashem. They wanted to experience the intimacy with the divine represented by the high priesthood. They wanted part of that. In this sense, Korach's desire was beautiful. His yearning was real, but the problem was not that he wanted holiness. The problem was that he wanted holiness on his own terms. And it's a calling for us, where are you taking your Torah in your own terms? And I tell you, it's very difficult, right? For example, when you have a 3-day Yom Tov and you're not really supposed to take a shower on Shabbat, full shower, wash your hair, blow dry it, and look pretty for a shul. Where are you saying, okay, Hashem, you know, my hair is going to look a little off. It's funny because when I came to the synagogue many, many years ago, people used to see me during the week. And then in Shabbat, people used to tell me, Rahel, you look so tired. Until the point I said, that's just my Shabbos look. No makeup. There's no lipstick, there's no gloss, there's no... So whatever was left from yesterday, right? So are you making your Shabbat about your experience? Or are you making your Shabbat about what Hashem wants from you? I'm not talking only about dress, makeup, hair. I'm talking about thinking the crux of your life where you're still wrestling with, Hashem, I want to do it my way. I want to do it my way. I know best. It just works better for me. Or the typical one, I'm not there yet. It's not for me. That's for like, you know, the people in Brooklyn over there, right? So Judaism teaches us that true spirituality is not simply about wanting closeness to Hashem. It is about seeking that closeness through the path that Hashem himself established. I'm going to repeat this, girls, because this is so important. And I'm going to tell you a very quick story about that I just heard on a podcast yesterday. I was listening to a podcast. I had to go to Brooklyn. And the podcast was in Spanish. Otherwise, I will share with you. Unless you speak Spanish, I'm happy to share. And it was speaking about a lady who's been interviewed at a very, very strange thing. In the beginning, she couldn't get pregnant. And then she got pregnant. And after she got pregnant, there was some complications with the delivery. And they realized that there was something with the kid. And then the kid had to have surgery. And then a few years later, again, she's trying to get pregnant. Again, she has a baby girl. And now she has 2 kids. And as she goes through her life with 2 children, she realizes that the second baby is being delayed. You know how you go to the doctor and they give you 90% out, and you're like so excited, my kid's 90%, right? And all of a sudden she sees her kids like 80%. As the time is progressing, all the percentages and everything she's doing is less and less and less. So when the baby is almost a year, they say, okay, no, something is wrong. We need to figure it out. So they figure it out and they see that she has some delays. And after they see that she has some delays, it was inconclusive what the diagnosis is. But now the parents need to do all these different therapies and all these different things. And it's like the whole life is completely upside down. And this couple, they are runners. They run marathons together. And they have a business and everything else. And, when a person is confronted with such a situation, like, what do you do? What can you do with it? And she obviously sought for a lot of help. She was also an educator. So she said, I knew how to do a lot of things, and I was doing therapies for my kids all the time and doing this and doing that. And one time she was so overwhelmed with it, she went to speak to somebody, and like the service coordinator, and the service coordinator said to her, you don't need to be busy in how is this kid gonna walk or talk, or you don't need to be busy in the long term. A lot of times even you don't need to do the therapy. You need to take her to the best therapies. But your job is to know that this kid was given to you because there is something that you could give this kid that nobody else can give, and there's something that this kid could bring to the world that nobody else can because of all the things that you're gonna do. So focus on your actions and don't focus on the outcome. Focus on what you are bringing. Focus on what Hashem wants from you. And she was saying that she one time went to a convention for children with special needs. And she said to me, mid-convention, she said to her husband, let's go. We don't belong here. And when she came out, people are like, why are you leaving? She says, and again, I'm not minimizing. She says, if the outlook is about the gifts that Hashem gave us and what we could do the best with it, I'm in. But if it's somebody's going to stand up there and say, oh, poor me, this happened to me, and because of that, I'm not interested. So it's very difficult because we all challenge. I'm not speaking about a kid who has challenge. We are all challenged. We always, dress up and look pretty, but we all have something inside that needs tend and care. And the question is, are you focusing on you, or are you able to shred your wanting of what you think life should look like so you can give enough space for Hashem and take what He's giving you? This is your purpose. This is your mission. If this business went south, it's because you need to do a different business. You fulfill your with this. If this relationship is not working, it's because you need to go, come down, and speak to the person properly. You need to start looking within yourself and saying, where can I take the spark of Hashem? Like what we do in Pesach. What we do in Pesach, we don't go with a flashlight looking. We take a little candle, because a little candle could shine in the darkest all the chametz. We need to take that light, that is the Torah, and go in the deepest recesses of your soul and say, where am I not being godlike? Where am I not bringing Hashem into my life? So from here we see that this is where Korach mistakes became surprisingly relevant. Most of us do not struggle with the challenges of the spies, right? We know what's right and we know what's wrong. Few people today are trying to escape into the desert of spirituality. Very few people want only spiritual life, right? Leavdil monks, right? They want nothing to do with this world. We're already immersed in this world. We work, we raise families, we manage plenty of responsibilities. We navigate the demands of every single day life. We still get to post, right? And through our challenges is often much closer to Korach. Sometimes a person continues doing all the right things, but the inspiration slowly fades. You keep giving tzedakah, but you don't even know what you're doing. You pray like a robot. Okay, that took 5 minutes. That was too long. That took 5 minutes. I missed who won the FIFA game. I don't even know because I don't watch sport, right? Or is Shabbat has to end because the game is on, right? Sorry, my kids were saying that they know who went to the game and who didn't because the people posted. You know who went Shabbat to the game, right? When you no longer, sometimes a person continues doing all the right things, but his spiritual slowly fades. The mitzvot remain, but the excitement weakens. The routines continue. You're praying every single day, but the connection becomes distant. How many times you finish to pray and you're like, did I say Allel today? Was it Rosh Chodesh? I can't remember. A person can continue observing Judaism while losing touch with the relationship that gives Judaism its life. Korach believed that action alone was enough. Moshe teaches us that the action alone is never enough. Hashem wants more than from you. He wants more than a performance. He wants a relationship. He wants intimacy. He wants awareness. He wants you to know that Hashem is right there with you. He doesn't want you to be all stressed out. Oh my God, oh my God. Okay, Hashem is challenging, but I know you're going to pull me through this. He wants us to transform the world while continually remembering who we are, transforming it for. I'm not doing mitzvot because they're fun. I'm doing mitzvot because my mitzvah is changing the spiritual skylight of the world forever and ever. The minute you did your mitzvah and you learn Torah, the world is actually not the same. When you go out there, you're going to say, oh, it's exactly the same crazy. What you don't realize is that there's a whole world that is hidden that you're not even in tune with it, you don't even realize exists. Like the story I said once very quickly about the person, one time Hashem turned off the lights of the world and people devise ways to do things. So I had a thick rope to go from here to the cities and a thinner rope to go from here to the cleaners and a thicker rope to go to... And all of a sudden, Hashem turned on the lights and you see this maze, this intertwine, is like, right? You have to understand that we're living in a dark world, but you don't know the underground light that you're creating by just being Jewish, by just behaving Jewish, by thinking Jewish, by doing a mitzvah, by pushing forward, by learning Torah. What you are doing, when you pray in New York, you're saving lives on the front lines of the IDF in Israel. When you pray in New York, you're rerouting the missiles that be. You are creating a ripple effect, because if your mission was in the front lines in Israel, you will be a chayal in Eretz Israel, enjoying the lands of Israel. But Hashem didn't make you into a chayal in the physical terms. He make you a chayal in the spiritual realm. Their lifeline depends on what you're doing here. So don't fool yourself that when you take an hour for Torah, you're like, so I didn't get to do my blooming this today. When you're taking an hour for Torah, you have changed the rest of the day, the rest of the week, the rest of the year, the whole Jewish nation with your little action in New York. So prayer and Torah study are not interruptions to life. They are what keep the soul awake inside life. And now we move on to one famous question associated with Korach. Concerns a house filled with Torah scrolls. If a single mezuzah can sanctify a home, Korach asked, why should a house filled with Torahs require a mezuzah at all? On the surface, it sounds like a clever argument, but beneath the question lies Korach's entire worldview. The answer lies in where the mezuzah is placed. It's not placed in the center, like I just said in the story I told you about my husband, of the house, right? Like the Mishkan was placed in the center of the camp, right? You don't go and put it in your dining room table or in the middle of your kitchen. We know the mezuzah is at the door. It's not placed at the center of the house, but in the doorway. The doorway is the meeting place between holiness and ordinary life. Every time a person enters or leaves the house, the mezuzah is reminding him that the Torah is not meant to remain inside holy place. The beauty of the Torah is when you find Torah out there on the street. When you have somebody, thank God. Like my husband said in last week's class, whoever was there, was the drush in the morning was amazing. He was saying that I can't do justice to his class. So yeah, hopefully he'll be recording notes soon. But he was saying that how do you what is your shield? Or how do you show up in the world? How you create? How you sanctify Hashem's name? When somebody says to you, "How are you?" You don't say, "Oh, good." You say, "Baruch Hashem." Even to such a greeting, to such a simple thing, you need bring. There was many more layers to his class. Obviously, just one thing that kept staying. So every time a person enters or leaves the home, the Mezuzah reminds that the Torah is not meant to remain inside the holy spaces. It must accompany him into the world, into his work, into relationship, conversations, and into decisions. The goal is not simply to fill a house with Torah books. You see, our shul is filled up with Torah books. There's actually a mitzvah that the Lubavitcher Rebbe did over the years. He created mitzvahs that were everybody put on tefillin. Everybody have a kosher mezuzah. One of them is a house maleh of sefarim. You have a house full of sefarim because that's your shield. That's your protection. That's why if you're changing a baby, you can't change a baby right here. Or if you change your clothes, you don't put holy books in your room. You put them outside in the living room, right? Because it has a certain level of kedusha. So the goal is not simply to fill a house with Torah books. The goal is for the Torah to shape the way you live. And it's interesting because if you take a Torah, a house, children, and you give them all the latest, we go to Barnes and Noble, buy all the books on who knows what they write, right? That child is going to be raised in a completely different mindset than a house that had Torah books. That your kids saw you in the morning picking up the Siddur and reading for 5 minutes, or you heard such a no good news and you took money and you put it in the Kupat Tzedakah, right? You are the influencer number one. So the mezuzah stands at the doorway because holiness must move outward into life while remaining connected to its source. And I want to move over to a different point. One of the heroes of this parsha never gives speech and never stands before the nation. Anybody knows what I'm talking about? It's a she.
The wife of the man who said she got her husband drunk, Onen, and she said, "You're not going to fight against Moshe. You're going to stay here." She got her husband.
Beautiful.
And then she uncovered her hair and the man ran away.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a very key point about a woman who can bring a man up or bring a.
Yeah.
Why are you?
She is the wife of On Ben Pelet. Listen, while hundreds of respected leaders became swept up in Korach rebellion, she remained clear-headed. She asked her husband a simple question: "What exactly do you gain from this?" That question changed everything. While others were caught up in the emotions and excitement of the moment, she saw the situation for what it was. Her wisdom saved her husband and ultimately saved her family. For us women, this is one of the most powerful lessons in the Parsha. Leadership is not always public. I know we're living on the Instagram, see me, right? Leadership is not always public. Influence is not always loud. Sometimes the greatest impact comes from the ability to bring clarity where others see confusion. And sometimes it's not about giving a lecture to somebody. Sometimes it's just on the way you react, or just being there listening, or being present. Or sometimes you give the strongest thing. A lot of times my kids always ask questions where, life happens in the house. And I talk to my kids a lot more because I'm home more. When my husband comes, I always say, let's ask Abba. We wait for Abba to. So they ask my husband questions. And before my husband has a way to answer yet, my son looks at me and he says, "I know what you're thinking. You don't agree with, or you agree with, or you're thinking." It's your face. It's your gestures. It's your, right? It has tremendous influence. Tremendous influence. Is how you focus on the good that the people that are around you. Is how you empower another person. So a thoughtful question, a wise perspective, or a moment of insight can change the direction of an entire life. So after the rebellion ends, Hashem reaffirms the distinctions between the Kohanim, the Leviim, and the rest of the Jewish people. In other words, the Torah rejects Korach's conclusion, yet the parsha still bears his name. Why? Doesn't make sense. because beneath Korach's mistake was something worth preserving. Korach wanted more. He wanted more closeness to Hashem, more transcendence. He refused to settle for spiritual mediocrity. The Torah rejects his approach, but it preserves his yearning. There's an important lesson here. Judaism does not encourage compliancy, and you should always want to grow, always wants to learn, always wants to deepen the relationship with Hashem. The goal is not to reject Korach's desire. The goal is to direct that desire properly. And I was giving a Tanya class in which I spoke, and I'm going to repeat this. The goal of Korach was not to reject. The goal is not to reject Korach's desire. The goal is to direct that desire properly. And there was something I just said on a Tanya class that I was giving to a different group that, and I think I mentioned it, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, that the idea that you have a drive, and the idea is not to say to your drive, oh, it's not only to say to the drive, let's not go for what the desire wants. So for example, the simple example I always give is food. A person is hungry, wants to eat the French fries at the McDonald's. It's French fries, what is it, potato, oil? It's nothing, what's the big deal, right? But I'm really hungry, I can't handle it. The point is not only to say I'm not eating the fries, the point is to make you not even desire to go into a non-kosher establishment. It's to take in your yetzer and say, guess what? Now, not only you're not going to have your own identity, I'm going to make you have no identity, but your new identity is going to be God. How hard that is. It's not to want to want. It's not to want to want. Not so simple. Not to want to want. And you could apply it to any part of your life. What you eat, how you dress, how you walk, how you sleep, any part, because your life is not just a human life. You are a beacon of light on planet Earth that brings into this world spirituality time and time and time and time over again. You're not living simple life, oh, I'm going to Costco. You're doing something transformational. So perhaps this is why the story of Korach follows right after the story of the spies. The spies and Korach appear to be opposites, but they're actually struggling with two sides of the same question. The spies believed holiness could only survive in the desert, right? They wanted to remain there. Korach believed that holiness could survive entirely within the world, and the Torah rejects both extremes. Hashem does not ask us to escape the world. He asks us to enter it fully, to build homes, to raise families, work, to create, transform reality into a dwelling place for Hashem. But at the same time, he asks us to never stop looking upward, never stop learning, never stop praying, never stop seeking a deeper relationship with Hashem. And this brings me to the punchline of this parsha. Naaseh v'nishma. The challenge of the Jewish life is not choosing between heaven and earth. That is not our challenge, because we know we're godly beings. The challenge is connecting the two of them. You're not supposed to remain two different things. The whole purpose of creation is to intertwine heaven on earth. In one hand, you're becoming godly, and at the same time, you bring godliness into physicality. It's a two-way street. To live fully within the world while remaining connected to something beyond it, to transform ordinary life without losing sight of the sword that gives it meaning. The spies fear entering into the world because they thought it will distance them from Hashem. And Korach embraced the world, but forgot why we need to keep reaching upward. Now Moshe comes and he teaches us a third path forward. What is that? To bring heaven into earth, while never forgetting that heaven exists. And perhaps that is the lifelong mission of every single Jewish soul. What is that mission? Nishma. Because as we learned in Bitachon, I was just having this conversation with my Havruta that sometimes you learn the Bitachon for a year, 2 years, or you read it, betterly say, and you still feel very emotionally pulled, or very anxious, or very tired, or you can't handle it, or depressed, or whatever it might be. And the question is, why it's not working? And it's not working because there is not enough practice. Because if you permeate your mind with full Torah, the ripples effects become natural. If your mind is always connecting, there is Hashem, there is Hashem, there is Hashem, little repeating yourself 100 times, say, there is Hashem, Hashem is with me, Hashem is with me, Hashem is with me. All of a sudden, you start feeling, you download it from an intellectual pursuit to an emotional response. And I leave you with something that accompanied many years, in my very difficult years. Baruch Hashem, I don't have to look at it all the time. This was one of my Instagram things. It says, God has placed you where you are in this very moment for a reason. Remember that and trust that He's working everything out. Remember that He's working everything out. And when you begin to not only learn about it, but you learn to, Hashem is with me right now. Oh, Hashem is with me right now. That is the ultimate, deepest connection, bringing godliness into this world. I hope you guys enjoy the class, and I look forward to seeing you, Mr. Hashem, next week.